Sal Capaccio, as good as they come on the sidelines for the Buffalo Bills, also a host on WGR, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Sal, appreciate the time. I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but how you been?
I do too, man. I was really looking forward to New Orleans and planning, but not wanting to plan, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And obviously the disappointment of not getting there now.
And you know what? I took the bait. I thought they were going to beat Kansas City. I respect Kansas City. I know how great they are. But, man, I feel bad for the Bills fans, and I also feel really bad for Josh Allen. Because it'd be one thing, right? It's easy for people to say, oh, Josh Allen can't win the big game up against the Chiefs. But his stats, his numbers up against the Chiefs and in these playoff losses are really damn good. And he did everything he could at the end of that game. And unfortunately, just Dalton Kincaid couldn't reel in that catch.
Yeah, but listen, I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit for anybody, right? Well, Josh Allen can't beat Patrick Mahomes. I mean, well, he has, not in the playoffs. We know that. They've beaten him 4 times, and his stats are unbelievable. He does enough in all of these games. It's also, I don't think, fair, and not that you're doing this, but to just put it on that play to Dalton Kincaid. Of course, that is one play that hurt the Bills. There's a lot of plays that hurt the Bills. Short yardage really hurt the Bills. The Kansas City Chiefs had a great plan to stop the tush push, stop the short yardage plays. The Bills could not stop the Chiefs in the first half. On the Bills' defensive side, the Chiefs had 21 points in the first half. There's a lot of things that went wrong in this game. It just seemed like all of the little details the Chiefs were better at. And once again, they were the better team in the most critical of games. Another 3-point loss to them in a playoff game. It's tough here because, of course, right? You always remember the team that loses and how they keep getting there and they keep failing. And yet they're still the second best team in the conference every year. And it's hard to wash talking about that and trying to say, yeah, but they're still really good, but they can't beat the Chiefs. Well, neither could 13 other teams, 15 other teams, whatever, in the conference. And it's so hard to kind of walk through that every year.
4th and 1 on, I thought Josh got it. Now, I didn't think he got it right away. When you see the overview look, it looked like he got it. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Looking at the views afterwards, I think there's a clear case to be made that Josh Allen had the first down. In real time, I thought it was very close. I saw the replay inside the stadium, obviously, but look, we know how this goes, right, Zach? Which is they don't usually overturn them when they're that close, and they usually stick with the call on the field, just like the Xavier Worthy catch earlier in the game. You should stick with the call when it's that close on the field. I said all week, all this talk about Chiefs officiating, all these calls, don't leave it in the hands of the officials. Get the first down. You should be able to get a yard. You should be able to get a yard and a half with Josh Allen, the tush push. It's been their best play in short yardage all year, but the Chiefs had a great plan, and the Bills didn't do anything different, and they weren't able to get those yards.
Sal Capaccio here with us. When you get back to James Cook, I thought he was their best player in the game, period. No disrespect to Josh Allen. He played a really good game. Mm-hmm. I was annoyed at times, though, late in that game that they weren't getting the ball to him. I know McDermott is a defensive-minded head coach, but do you think there was regret there from McDermott and Joe Brady they didn't get the ball to Cook more?
I don't know. We haven't talked to Sean yet, and we haven't talked to Joe Brady, and I don't know if we will at all. I'm sure that Joe Brady will give us the same answer he does in these situations, which is, I got to do a better job, right? That's what they're going to say. I actually thought they should have gone to James Cook more early in the game. The Bills, he had a 3-and-out to start the game. It was a Josh run and then 2 Josh passes that were off target. And he didn't touch the ball in the first series, James Cook. He had 4 carries in the first half. They get to the second half, he starts running the ball as we know James Cook can and winds up with over 6 yards of carry. So, yeah, I think the bigger issue is it's not just the second half. I think the smaller, I said, picture issue is that final drive, James Cook wasn't on the field. And I think there's a lot of questions about why it wasn't. My guess is, we haven't talked to Joe Brady yet, my guess is they wanted Ty Johnson for pass protection because he is a much better pass protector than James Cook, and then you can leak him out. That would probably be the reason. But at the same time, there's so much time left in the game. There's still over 2 minutes when you get the ball back. There's time there to keep going with James Cook and to bleed the clock down and have him keep running the way he was.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of the Bengals-Rams Super Bowl, where ironically enough, Samaje Perine was on the field over Joe Mixon. And hey, I understand the pass protection effort, like you're saying, but I'd rather have the better player on the field in that case in crunch time when you need someone to make a big play.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the criticisms after the game, right, of everything that happened. And then you do have the 4th down play. He wasn't on the field, obviously. It was coming out of the 2-minute warning there. And there's been a lot of talk and debate, as you've seen, Zach, about what Josh should have done differently. And I will tell you, I love the transparency from the players in the locker rooms. Osiris Torrance, the guard for the Bills, told me yesterday, he said, listen, they blitz from the opposite side they're showing usually. So if they're showing to your right, offensive right, they come from the left. They were showing from the right. So we slid our protection to the left. That time they switched it up. And as far as Josh is concerned, Josh said, look, I had my first cadence where he goes, hut, 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 to see what they show. He said, and he looked at it. They didn't change up. So he was comfortable with where they were. I just think, listen, that Bills fans, people love to just bang on the loser, and you can do that all you want. I give credit there. Just the Chiefs had a really nice play. And sometimes you lose the rep and you lose the play. And Steve Spagnuolo did a great job in that situation.
I don't know if you felt this way on the sideline. I'm sure you're right. You have hope all the way until the end. But at least sitting on my couch and looking at the reaction real time on social media, the moment that the Bills didn't get the Kincaid play converted, that everyone felt like the game was over. They could have still got the ball back. And that third down play where Pirine, I was livid about it when I'm watching. And I get it's a Chiefs. They always make those plays. But what was kind of your feel on the sideline? Because it's sensed from afar, even though the game wasn't over, a lot of people felt like the game was over once the Chiefs got the ball back.
I felt that was probably the case, but we all knew that the Bills had 2 timeouts. And then when he went out of bounds on the first one, there's still a chance, right? And then he gets to another third down in that situation. Give the Chiefs credit again. They come up with a good play, but the Bills edge defenders didn't have a very good night. That was another one of those plays where they just weren't in the right spot. Not necessarily as much on that play. Mahomes with his legs, designed runs hurt the Bills. That particular third down, though, Chiefs had a nice call. Bills couldn't stop them. I thought the game was probably over once the Chiefs got the ball, but you're right. You never know. Listen, what was going through my mind is, boy, if they don't get the third down, the Chiefs had a decision to make. Because if they kick a long field goal and miss, the Bills will have a really great field position with a minute left. But obviously, it didn't work out that way.
Sal Capaccio here with us. When we get to the topic of McDermott, I know he's not going anywhere. He just signed an extension this past offseason. We know that he's a good coach in this league. The Bills didn't make the playoffs 17 straight years prior to him getting there. But I just wonder if he's reached his apex here. Now, I threw out after the game, go get Belichick from UNC. Like that, I think would be worth the payoff. But outside of that, I don't even think they're going to get Belichick, to be clear. But this is someone to me that I'm curious if he's just done everything that there is to possibly do at Buffalo for what Sean McDermott's capable of.
You and I could have a great talk show on this one at some point, because I don't think Bill Belichick's the answer for any NFL team. I think that he reached his apex once Tom Brady left. He didn't do anything after that, and I thought the game kind of passed him by, to be quite honest with you. I think it would be a downgrade to go from Sean McDermott to Bill Belichick. But I do think that I will tell you, there are a lot of fans who have the same mindset as you. I'm not one of them. I'm known here locally as a Sean McDermott defender, but I try to explain to people that there's so much that goes into head coaching and building a program, and this man has done it so well. And I get they've gotten to these big games, and the criticism is very valid that his defense, as a defensive-minded head coach, has not had the right answers against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll also tell you that Zach Taylor hasn't beaten them, and John Harbaugh hasn't beaten them, and a lot of other coaches haven't beaten them. They're not getting fired because of it, but because the Bills reach it and they lose to them, specifically, the criticism falls on Sean McDermott and how maybe he's the guy, that should be fired out of this entire group. I'll also tell you that this was supposed to be a reset year for the Bills by a lot of people.
Good point.
I could make the argument easily. This was Sean McDermott's best coaching job outside of 2017, when people thought they were tanking and made the playoffs.
And that's why I think people feel like how I do is, yes, the Bills overachieved this year. The Bills did more than what people thought they were going to do before the year. And still, when it ends with losing to Kansas City, it's okay. Even in a year that you overachieve, you still lose to these guys. So is he the right coach to get them to where you want to go? And that's the missing thing, which is the Lombardi Trophy. And
I guess my question would be, Zach,
yeah.
Right. And I guess my question, I ask people this. So tell me who's going to do that then? Like, do you have the right? You think Belichick? I wouldn't think that either way. He's not coaching. He's not coming here, whatever. But if that's where you have to go, if you think that you got to get the greatest coach of all time, I think that answers your question. Who are you going to get to do it?
Yeah, and also, I thought if they were going to do so, it would have been better to do so last year when you had Jim Harbaugh available too. I thought Harbaugh would have been a rock star with the Buffalo Bills, and I know he hasn't won a Super Bowl in this league. He's got to one. And I think Pete Carroll would have been interesting, but now we know he's off the market. And Mike Vrabel would have been interesting too, but he's off the market as well. So it's like, I think that ship has sailed.
All coaches who haven't beaten Andy Reid yet, by the way.
Yeah, no, fair. Definitely fair on that front. By the way, the locker room after the game, I would imagine the worst locker room you've ever been and after a game in terms of like what the heck just happened. Covering this group of team was a 13-second game, right? Is that fair to say?
13 seconds was tough. Here, let me say this.
Outside of the DeMar Hamlin situation.
No. But I would say you have to remember. So in 2020, they go to the AFC Championship game. They lose. We didn't travel as a radio crew. The 21, I was there with 13 seconds, but the media wasn't allowed in the locker room. So I wasn't.
Really?
I wouldn't tell you. Yeah. So we couldn't tell you. That because of COVID. Right. There were protocols. I would tell you last year losing at home, and the Stephon Diggs drama all year. And how that went down, that was a tough one too, because it was it was a different feel. Yeah, I think this was certainly a what the hell just happened. There's no doubt. Yeah, I would say that's the case. I remember I was young. I was in Florida, and I was at a Bills-Dolphins 98 playoff game when the Bills, Trace Armstrong of the Dolphins sacked Doug Flutie at the goal line basically to lose the game for the Bills. And that was one of the worst locker rooms I've ever been in, because the Bills had driven all the way down to the goal line to win the game, and they wound up losing the game. And I remember going in that locker room, and that was Jimmy Johnson on the other side, and that was a pretty tough one. Anytime you cover these things, there's always certain aspects and guys that stand out to you, but certainly this was a rough one.
In your interaction with Bills fans, and they're some of the best fans that the NFL has to offer. Like one of my buddies, his dad's from Buffalo, loves the Bills, season ticket member, and I texted my buddy yesterday, I go, how's your dad doing? And he goes, better than I thought. And I go, well, is that denial? Or is that you're just numb to it at this point? Like, what's the mindset of the Bills fan as before the year was like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. And then they sucked them back in and they got their heart ripped out once again in the AFC Championship game.
If I would have told most Bills fans before the season started, this team's going to get to the AFC Championship game, they would have been like, no way. You're out of your mind. You look at all these changes they made. But as the season went on, you saw that they won the division pretty clearly, and they had this really great offense again. And Josh Allen, I think there was a belief this is the year. Like, look at the Chiefs. We're vulnerable, right? So now you get to this point, and I think that's what makes it crushing, which is how many times in a row can you climb that mountain, get very, very top almost, and then you have to go all the way back down and start over again. But I think part of it is, Zach, that there's this, like, I think about next year already, the same way that this year was, but even more so now, which is, doesn't it feel like it doesn't matter what you do? I don't know if you can beat the Chiefs. Like that, again, going back to your comment about McDermott, whoever, I don't care who the coach is. It just seems like it's like inevitable that they're going to win in the end. Like,
and it's not just for the Bills. Like, it's the same thing for the Ravens. Until the Ravens beat the Chiefs or Lamar wins a few playoff games. Yeah, I know the NFL regular season's never irrelevant. It's not the NBA. But for the Bills, Ravens, and I know the Bengals, they still got to get back to the playoffs. And I know the Bengals beat the Chiefs once, but it's like until someone takes down Kansas City in the AFC, and then you still got to go on to win the Super Bowl, why should I believe that anything else is gonna happen differently?
I mean, the Chiefs come to Buffalo again next year, just like they did this year for the regular season. And I can tell you right now, it's going to be the same kind of thing where, so what? Go beat them in the regular season. What does it matter? Like, that's really what the attitude is, right? So how's everybody doing here? It's pretty devastating here, obviously. We got back. I fly in the team charter as part of the radio crew. We landed at 3 a.m. There were quite a few Bills fans at the airport still greeting the team. Bills Mafia, they love their team. They're still very passionate, obviously. It's 3 a.m. It's freezing out. They're out there in the cold doing that. And, it's going to take a little time to get over it, but we went to 4 Super Bowls and lost. And then they go to Tennessee and home run throwback and lose, right? And you have no goal in the Stanley Cup Finals the same year and lose. And we have a lot of scar tissue, but we're still here. And I think that's what makes this area of sports fans special.
So I don't think it's a mental hurdle to be clear with this Bills group. Like, this is a confident group. This is a really good locker room. I know some of the players in the team. Obviously, I went to college with Deion Dawkins. I'm wearing the Temple shirt today. That wasn't just because we were having you on. So I got to ask, outside of just, hey, you got to eventually beat Kansas City, and we know how great Mahomes are, like Mahomes is and Andy Reid and all that. What else does this team need? Like, to put them in a better position next year, what do you think are some areas to target in this offseason to improve?
So I think that what's missing is another superstar, especially on the defensive side. I mean, Terrell Bernard is a fantastic player. Matt Milano's a fantastic player when he's healthy, and they have really good players, right? But they don't have a superstar game changer on defense. That's a pass rusher. There's been talk about trying to go out and get Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. I just read a report that the Browns aren't trading Myles Garrett. What are you doing anyway? You're trading 2 first-rounders? I mean, I guess that's what it would take at least, right? I think that's something that's been missing for a few years, Zach. I mean, when the Bills couldn't get Mahomes down in the 21-second game, that's why they signed Von Miller, who, by the way, was terrific until he tore his ACL the next year, right? People say that was a wasted or busted signing. It was not, but he got hurt, right? And now you're paying for that because of the money you're paying him. That's number one. I think the other thing is we've seen Josh Allen elevate anybody around him. There's no doubt about that. Look what he did with this receiving core. But when the chips were down, you wondered who were the guys that who could you go to make a play as a wide receiver. And I think that's another discussion coming up this year, which we had a lot of last year, but I think they at least answered that you don't have to have that guy to be a great team, but you might have to have that guy in the critical moments in a critical game.
I wonder if they could kill two birds with one stone, where you go get either a pass rusher or a wide receiver, and you also take away from another one of those good AFC teams. Mm-hmm. Like, just hearing you talk, I'm thinking, I know T. Higgins is a free agent. Trey Hendrickson wants a new contract. He's on the final year of his deal. I don't know if the Bills and the Bengals are doing a trade, but I also didn't think the Bills were going to be traded in the draft with the Chiefs. So I wonder if either T. Higgins or Trey Hendrickson would be in Buffalo next year.
Yeah, Trey's an interesting name. I haven't thought about him much, but there's a lot of talk, Bills fans thinking about T. Higgins and what that would look like. The thing is with this organization, though, is I think that they showed last year they don't want to spend the kind of money it takes to bring in that type of wide receiver, unless he's truly like maybe a Justin Jefferson you would do that for. Is T. Higgins on that level? Probably not, but you might be spending that kind of money. It's the same way they kind of treat running backs, where, James Cook going into the fourth year, he's going to have a contract extension he's eligible for now starting this year. You got Dalvin out there tweeting how James needs $20 million a year, right? Like, the Bills don't operate that way. And for a large part, it's been the successful way, which is, hey, we're going to pay our quarterback and we're going to get a lot of really good players around the roster, and he's going to elevate some players, but we're not going to overspend at one spot where, do we really want to spend that much on a running back? But look what the Eagles did this year to help out, with Saquon Barkley. So maybe the Bills have a change of philosophy at one of those positions, and maybe a guy like T. Higgins could be in play. There's other receivers. I think you also need some guys like, they signed Curtis Samuel last year, $8 million a year. Didn't really work out this year. He was injured for a lot this year. That's a guy that I think they have to rely on a little bit more next year. And aside from Dalton Kincaid's play at the end of the game, that never worked as much as it should have this year either. And
you're right.
Dalton, we learned yesterday from Dawson Knox that Dalton had played through a torn PCL at times this year, and his other knee was hurting as well. I think he had fluid or something. So, that needs to be something that hits a little bit more, because look at Brock Bowers. Look at Sam Laporta. Look at some of these young tight ends, and the Bills drafted him in the first round. So they're going to have to get more out of that particular position, out of him, and at least how maybe they match him up next year, because it was just, hey, he's one of the guys this year. But those are little things that have to change.
Yeah, you need either Keon Coleman or Dalton Kincaid with the guys that they have next year to take the next step.
Yes. 100%. And
one of those
and you're
going
to need that. You're going to need that a couple places. I think one area they do have to look at too is corner. I mean, we saw what happened when Christian Benford left. They just targeted Kyrie Elam. Kyrie Elam's been a bust. I mean, he's not an NFL caliber corner, and he was a first round pick, and that's a miss by this organization right now. But they need something, because Rasul Douglas at 31, he's going to be a free agent. He had a nice year when he got here last year in the trade. Not quite as great this year. Seemed like he was targeted a little bit towards the back end of the year. So if you go into next year with just Christian Benford, who's on the other side, I mean, you face all these great teams. We're just talking about all these great quarterbacks. They're going to have to look at the corner position.
He's Sal Capaccio, one of the best when it comes to covering the Buffalo Bills. You catch him on the sideline, also catch him on WGR, and he's kind enough to join us right here on the Zach Gelb Show. Sal, appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, buddy, anytime.